And today is the International Human Rights Day. The day commemorates the anniversary of one of the world's most groundbreaking global pledges, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UNDHR. This landmark document enshrines the unalienable rights that everyone is entitled to have as a human being, regardless of their race, color, religion, sex, language, political or other opinion, national or even social origin, property, birth, or other status. The International Human Rights Day, UN says, focuses on how human rights are a pathway to solutions, playing a critical role as a preventative, protective, and transformative force for good. Human rights are the foundation for peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. The day has been themed, Our Rights, Our Future, Right Now. So this morning, to discuss the importance of the International Human Rights Day, we have Director of Education, Communication and Training, Human Rights Commission, Richard Tamba Bayo, and Media and Political Analyst, Lawrence Williams. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks
Good
for
morning,
being here.
Phoebe.
Tamba, I'll start with you. You know, just reading through the introduction, the rights enshrined, guaranteed, regardless of certain things. As we, as a nation, celebrate, commemorate, observe, whatever the choice of word would be of this day, what would be your fair assessment of the practice of human rights, the guarantee of human rights to every citizen in Sierra Leone?
First of all, you know, let's be fair with the previous government and the existing governments. Human rights are just like moral principles that are actually grafted into law. And then these laws are the ones that actually inform the conduct of us citizens. And so if, for example, there is a law, and the law provides that Fabian should go this way, and Fabian goes that way, that Fabian has gone against rights. That's what it basically is. And so Sierra Leoneans are obliged, they are obliged to go by what the laws provide and what we as Sierra Leoneans should carry on with to ensure that we are going through the right path. I want to go back to your premise, which you laid before the intro. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights actually came into existence in 1948. We are tired of that one because we've been saying it over and over again. But it came into existence in 1948. And so why the theme for this year, I'm going to deviate a little bit, but the theme, the International Human Rights Day theme for this year is inequality, reducing inequality and advancing human rights. Our rights, our future right now, is a campaign that is launched, that's going to be launched on this day. Our rights, our future right now. And why our right, our future right now hinges on what you just, question you just asked. You know, over the years, before 1948, the world was in chaos, major chaos. We had wars, world wars, and what have you.
Sounds very familiar to current day situation.
Exactly, that's where I'm coming now. World wars, several of them, you know, and it led to a lot of destruction. Human lives were destroyed, properties destroyed, economies were grounded. And so, looking at what is happening today, bigger economies are again going at war with each other. We are gradually returning, you know, we are gradually withdrawing from what we have, what has recorded from 1948 to date. We are gradually withdrawing from that and going back, plunging ourselves into before 1948. And so that's why this campaign, Our Rights, Our Future right now, is actually there to make sure that we begin to advance the need for pushing, for advocating for human rights, particularly with our stakeholders, those that are at the helm of affairs, those that promulgate laws, those that enforce the laws. These are the ones that we should be advancing our discussions with, because they are the ones who are eventually at the end, they are the ones who will be involved in even endorsing wars, fighting the wars. They are the ones. And so now we now own the responsibility to begin to advance our rights as human beings, not as Sierra Leoneans, because this is global. It's not just about Sierra Leone, it's global. begin to advance our rights as humans, and then besides advancing our rights as humans, we should as well begin to look at how our future will look like. Because already, if we allow what obtained before 1948, like it's gradual resurfacing, or allow it to happen, it's going to be worse than it was before. Because now we have arsenals have advanced than they were before. Now you have nuclear weapons. You have weapons that were used then are now archaic. They call them archaic weapons. They don't use them now because they are old and worn out. Now, what is used now are extraordinary supersonic weapons that just at the click, they go thousands of miles to destroy. So now you begin to see how it will look like if we get ourselves plunged into another situation like it was before 1948. And so as human beings, as persons, as living beings that we are, because the issue of rights is grafted in dignity. When you say human rights, it's about dignity. If we want our dignity as humans, it's now we should stand up, begin to do the necessary engagement with stakeholders, with persons that be those that are responsible, and those that are there that will just click the button and then there's war. Begin to push and advance this discussion. At the UN level, that discussion is going on now massively. In fact, in Europe, they have now set a body, the human rights body. They've now set a body that is actually advancing our rights, our future right now. All of this is geared towards making sure that what happened before 1948 does not come back again, because gradually, like I said, gradually showing its ugly head. And like I said, bigger economies are behind all of it, and they are the ones that are the button pushers. They are the ones that are the button pushers. And once this thing goes on, and they just continue going, we'll go somewhere, and then the button is pushed, and we're in chaos.
I'd like to usher in Lawrence. You've heard from him. First off, I would like to have your perspective about, or your opinion about human rights in Sierra Leone, and also looking at the role of media. As we all know, it's very important in shaping public opinion and also holding authorities in account. How would you describe, specifically the human rights aspect in Sierra Leone?
Okay, that's a quite difficult question. However, I tend to put it into two different perspectives. One, the HRCSL, which is the body established by law to oversee human rights situation in the country, given the devil its due, they have been doing their best to some extent since 2015, 16 onto this time. They have been doing their best, and I remember at some point during the EBK presidency, and the HRCSL almost put out a notice that the SLP should be banned from peacekeeping missions, owing to the fact that there were commission of human rights abuses, particularly extrajudicial killings or arbitrary arrests and detentions and so on and so forth. So in fact, the commission at some point, or rather on consecutive periods, have been assessed as grade A among international institutions. So at that side of the regulatory powers, they have been doing their own. Recently, I guess it was last year or so, they awarded compensation to victims of human rights abuses, torture, those who have suffered torture, arbitrary arrests, and so on and so forth from ASLAF and police personnel. So they have been doing a very good job to some extent. Now, but when you also now contrast it with what the U.S. State Department is saying concerning human rights practices in Sierra Leone, as much as the Commission, as an institution of the state, has been doing its own bit, yet you find out that there is more to be done. Because when you look at the report in itself, you find out that extrajudicial killings, for example, have become somewhat a perennial issue. People are behind bars for periods longer than necessary. Pretrial detention has been a very serious concern for most people across the board. And violence against women and girls. You talk about the sexual-based violence, whether it's physical abuse, assault, and sexual penetration. These are all issues that the State Department have clearly detailed that these issues are becoming very serious concern for not just Sierra Leoneans, but for even our development partners, those who are supporting us. And the deprivation of life. And we saw that since 2018, there have been series of concerns, especially from the opposition, about their members being arrested, being targeted, etc., etc. Again, another very important aspect of fundamental human rights has to do with the civic, civil, and political rights. The rights to peaceful assembly has been clearly and outrightly denied throughout this period. And that in itself constitutes a grave violation of fundamental human rights. So if we are to assess, I mean, given the brief synopsis of the human rights situation in the country, we will say as much as there seem to be some goodies on the side of the Commission, yet the practices in its entirety are not too good to talk about.
As a day like this today, the happenings in Sierra Leone, I beg your pardon, and the coincidence of having this International Human Rights Day, not too long ago, current conversation is there are a group of people who are also trying to put together a protest. And protesting has been one of the concerns of human rights of people in Sierra Leone being allowed to protest or demonstrate. We've heard from the police many times that they do not have a problem with the protests. All they need is someone to come forward and take responsibility, say, I am organizing the protest and I would be coordinating people. They had said repeatedly that that's all it takes and they would get to coordinating that. The story we're getting now this last 2 weeks has changed. How does that leave, where does that leave Sierra Leone in terms of human rights assessments and ratings, which comes out every year with the reports? I'll have both of you respond to the same thing.
Now, we have to understand and put things into context. First off, protests generally the world over, these are universal principles. Citizens, a group of people have the right to peaceful assembly. And if you check from 2017 to present, there have been about close to 800 protests the world over. Some of which have been very violent, very, very violent, resulting in severe casualties and deaths of civilians, security, government security forces, as the case may be. And for us in Sierra Leone, it's a dicey situation. One, I think the problem started with Sovula, and especially with the student protest, the Lincoln Wing students protest. That one was a peaceful assembly at the cotton tree. No harm was intended. These were students agitating for government support or continuation of government support toward their academic pursuit. Yet the police went there and used some kind of excessive force, arrested some students, even though they were later released. Of course, Thomas Moore and a few others were detained for over 24 hours. And because the government has consistently denied citizens the opportunity to peaceful protest as a means of venting out their agitations, whether it's about political issues, whether it's about the economy or some other social issues, citizens now live in fear of coming out to engage in such protest. But again, we saw what happened during the August 10th, August 10, 11, 8, 9, and 10, the August 10 protest. And of course, the government investigation committee set up to investigate what happened, brought out its report, identifying those who were, as part of this investigation, behind the protest. But at the same time, one of the key concerns for me in that report is that they make mention that the government should investigate to ascertain the number of civilian casualties. Even though we are told that about 30 people were killed, 6 police officers were also killed in the process. Yet the report says, this is the government investigation committee, saying that there should be an investigation to ascertain the exact number of civilian casualties. So that in itself is a red flag. Now, when it comes now to the recent action by Babadi and Maddie Williams, it has to be contextualized in the sense that we are faced with, or we are confronted with some security challenges in the country at the moment. We know there have been attempts to overthrow the government, and for me, I think that it is but wise for citizens to be very circumspect and meticulous about how they do things within this time. Political protest, of course, what they were demanding is very much within their legitimacy to do so. Don't forget, Sori Sengbemara approached the Supreme Court to compel ECSL to release disaggregated data. Now, the issue about election is, as long as I'm a registered voter, I have the right to challenge ECSL to produce the result. As long as I'm a registered voter, my name was on the register of ballots or of electors. So everyone can demand that. But we should understand that because the election itself was very much challenged, as stated by local international observer, to the extent that it was discredited as lacking transparency at major or very important stages of the process, the tabulation, the counting, and what have you. The opposition, which is the direct beneficiary of the election, the APC in this case, should be the one calling for protest. Again, because the concerned
Are elections issues only about politicians?
Well, not necessarily about politicians, but we must be very much of faith with the political environment. The environment is very toxic. And to say talk me, we are all family heads or breadwinners or what have you. If Samura Kamara or the APC could not call for protest, Lawrence Williams can never call for protest. I mean, in as much as it is within their legitimate right to call for protest.
So if it is within their legitimate right, when you say they, as in citizens who are on the voting register, why isn't it their prerogative to decide whether they want to protest for that or not?
I highlighted the prevailing security situation in the country. That is one pointer for government or the police to turn down such protests.
Should the prevailing security situation in the country let people who feel strongly about what happened during last year's elections be swept under the carpet?
Well, we should understand that.
Because in as much as you talk about the pointers of the elections observers, international community, about issues with the elections, the ECSL remains cocky that all everyone is saying is just someone's figment of imagination. As far as they know, they are okay. They acted professionally and within the ambits of the law.
First, we should understand that the ECSL is being protected by the establishment. Secondly, we should also understand that the problems that emanated from the election are being addressed in the agreement for national unity. One of those key pillars of that agreement is the outcome of the tripartite committee report, which has detailed about 8 80 recommendations to be implemented. These ones will lead or result in legal reforms, administrative reforms, as the case may be, concerning the body politics and the election and the electoral climate in its entirety.
So those are the politicians and their politics. Coming back on the context of the human rights and, you know, the rights of citizens and their participation in the elections processes leading us to where we are, with Babadi and co wanting to do a protest. Is it wrong for them as citizens to exercise their human rights and want to protest?
For me, as I said earlier, it is within their legitimate right to do so. Any citizen whose name is on the register of ballot or register of electors can demand for search. The police, well, for the longest of periods, have always argued that they would decide or determine whether to grant or deny such request. What I'm against is the detention of those two, and that is where the HICSL should come in, even without somebody filing a complaint.
Richard, I'd like to hear your perspective on this situation.
Yes, before I even go dwell on his last submissions, let me just go back to it. He started speaking on a very good platform. He said so well about the HRCSL, to which I think I accept and I agree that all what he said are all perfectly correct. Yes, we did submit position in respect of having the SLP not attending peace missions, being banned from attending peace missions, because we had an inquiry and there was an investigation which ended to find them wanting. You know, and I agree with that. And then I also want him to know that in my commission, we have consistently maintained our grade A status since the inception of the commission. And the grade A status is not given by Sierra Leone, it's given by Geneva, where the seat of human rights is. They are the ones who accord those grades to countries based on what you do in your country, how your government relates with you. Based on that, they accord you the status. And mark you, these people have eyes on the ground. I'm not going to argue his submission on the state report, the US state report, because that's their own findings. But I want to let him know that we have, as a commission, been monitoring the prisons. We are not only monitoring, we monitor, and then the outcome, we engage the persons that are responsible in handling their affairs, as it were, in those prisons. And I want him to know as well that on many occasions we have, our efforts have taken many people out of the prisons because they were over-detained. Some were there without indictment. We made sure that they were released, you know. And we commended the effort of the courts, that they were now going into the prisons, they were now going to sit cases now from point to point to make sure that some of these cases, backlog cases, without indictment, those cases are actually addressed ASAP. We have been putting our voice on that as well. And then about gender violence, the commission has done so much. Our chairperson will be releasing a statement today, and in that statement, I don't want to preempt though, but I'm sure she's going to make mention of gender challenges that we have in Sierra Leone. You know, because the theme for this year talks about equality, reducing inequality. You know, and obviously, I'm sure she must mention issues on gender. We have a directorate that addresses gender issues. And honestly, I want to say thanks to UNFPA.
Richard, I don't find pleasure interrupting you. We'll come to the gender issues. Let's, break these issues down. We're still on protests and demonstrations.
No, I'm coming there. That's what I'm saying. I want to go to what he said before I come to what I want to say in respect of the protest. Yeah, I entered it here. And let me end with what I was saying in gender-based violence. The commission is hardly on it. The reason why I'm mentioning this one, because he said that we are poor on that. But I want him to know that we are not poor on that. We have a directorate, and that directorate, they are really working. In fact, we intended to do a public inquiry again on sexual reproductive rights. But then that one, we went and engaged the US Embassy on this one. From there, we came back and we decided to just keep quiet, go low on it, and then change the structure of the inquiry. Now, about protest. In the first place, everybody has right to protest. That's where we begin. But then when I came here, before I spoke, I laid a premise. I said human rights are basic principles that are grafted into law. And these laws are the ones that guide our discipline. The laws are the ones that guide our discipline. Primary among them is the Sierra Leone Constitution. They guide our actions. And there is a provision. The police, they have a law that when you want to protest, there are processes and procedures you should follow. Okay? And it's law. It's gazetted. It's law. It's Sierra Leone law that you must apply, go through the processes, and then now we look at the advantages, the merits and demerits of that demonstration of yours. And then they will now grant you or not grant you based on their security findings. I am not a security expert to say their findings are wrong or their findings are right. But they can then grant you or not grant you based on their security findings. That's one. I know that the civil and political rights provides that everybody has the right to demonstrate. You have the right to go out and demonstrate and express your will. But you cannot just wake up in the morning. My brother cannot just wake up in the morning and jump on the street of Freetown and say he's demonstrating. They will obviously arrest him because it's going against the law. So if you want to demonstrate in Sierra Leone, it provides that you have to go by the law. Section 13 of our constitution talks about us Sierra Leoneans, how we should conduct ourselves. We should be patriotic, nationalistic, avoid destroying government property, respect our democracy and its structures. That's what it says. So if you flout that means you have gone against the law. And if you go against the law, it means you become culpable. And when you become culpable, the obvious end is what? You're being arrested. That's the obvious end. And Section 13 provides clearly that as Sierra Leoneans, we should be patriotic and nationalistic. We should respect our processes and procedures. Our policies that are there in Sierra Leone, we should respect them. Our practices, democratic practices and otherwise, we should respect them. That's what Section 13 strongly emphasizes as Sierra Leoneans. So I can't just wake up in the morning as Richard Mayo and then say I'm going to demonstrate because I say I have the right to demonstrate. Yes, I have the right. I've laid a premise, no? That I have the right to demonstrate. But my right to demonstrate, Sierra Leone provides laws for that. Maybe other countries, that's why I hate people comparing. I look at a country, they just wake up and not go. Maybe theirs is different. But Sierra Leone, there is a law that provides. And us as human rights practitioners, both national and international laws are the ones we ask government to go by. When we look at those laws and we see that those laws are not rights friendly, our act provides that we can go now and talk to government, tell them that those provisions in those laws are not right. You need to change them. Those laws that you've enacted, they are not correct. You need to change them. We can advise government on laws as they are. So the issue of demonstrating, yes, you have the right to demonstrate. But whether or not, yes, they have the right to demonstrate. They have it. But then they should go through the procedures that are set for that one. The civil and political right provides the well of the right to go to demonstrate. That's international law. And Sierra Leone, we are a dualist state. We can go and sign a law internationally, and then we come back home. We now have the responsibility to domesticate what we have signed internationally, and then it becomes our property. Like the CEDAW, the Maputo Protocol, and the others. These are international laws. But now we have GEWE, which is there. These are all excerpts from that provision. To make sure that we are able to go by what's there.
Let me hold you there for a bit and bring in Lawrence. As a media and political analyst, do you think there's a gap in terms of how we go about reporting on issues that has to do with human rights in Sierra Leone?
Before I answer the question, I think the man from HRCSL here has not done justice to some of the concerns raised. The point I was trying to make here is, as much as Babadi and others have legitimate right to demand for protest. They followed the procedure and they were invited and later arrested and detained. My point there is, even though the government would use the prevailing security situation in the country to deny protests, their arrest or detention should warrant the HICSL intervention without somebody complaining to the HICSL that XYZ people have been arrested because they followed procedure, because they wrote and demanding protests and things like that. That's the point I was trying to make. Now, on the aspect of media reportage on human rights issues, to a very large extent, media has been doing its bit. Don't forget, there are what we call specialized reporting as well in journalism. Not many journalists are somewhat interested in human rights reporting, so to speak. And if you check, many of us report politics. There was a time I called my vendor, because I'm also editor of Freetown Post newspaper. So I called my production man to inquire how the vendors are the reception of the paper on the newsstand. And what I got from him was that because we deal with more of economic reporting, social issues, and blah blah blah. And he said to me that the vendors are more interested in political news stories than public financial management or economic stories or development stories or these stories. So those are the stories that the public is interested in. That brings us to the question of what are we doing in terms of promoting human rights. When we advocate for justice for those who have been sexually abused, those who have been kids who have been sexually penetrated, we are promoting human rights. When we assemble a panel of experts, for example, to talk about environmental justice, we are promoting human rights, because part of the theme, reducing inequality, our rights, our future, also depends on how we manage the environment. Mind you, the concept of sustainable development encompasses a broad array of issues, one of which, in fact, key among those issues today is climate change. So now we are talking about climate rights, for example. I remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago, the citizens of Jakarta, they took their government to court, that the government has failed to protect them from air pollution. Cutting down of trees, companies emitting gases all around. The environment, the city was so polluted, so they had to take their governments to court. There are so many other issues. Recently, the ECOWAS court ordered or ruled that Sierra Leone should reform its loitering laws because it unfairly discriminates against people who probably are not even loitering around. They are going about their own normal businesses. What about those who are homeless? They don't have any place to stay. We've seen issues where somebody from Bont district had to take her matter to the ECOWAS court because she was sexually abused by a paramount chief, and the government could not ensure she gets justice. So all those efforts, the media has played a key role in all of those issues, even when it comes to accountability, use of public funds, corruption. The media has been at the fore. Mind you, these issues have a semblance of rights in it, because besides civil and political rights, there are social, economic, cultural rights. So when we talk about these issues, when we write about them, when we report on them, when we assemble panels to discuss these issues, the media is playing its own part. We don't go back to government say, we have a platform to do what we can.
Let's zoom lens on the loitering act itself, which the advocate successfully took to ECOWAS court. The conversation we had with the legal team from Advocate was shocking, that there are certain human rights violations that the police use against certain classes of people in the country, all under that Loitering Act. Say, for example, the commercial sex workers who get raped as well, allegedly by police during arrests for loitering, homeless people, people who are poor. Those in vehicles are not arrested for loitering, but those on foot are arrested for loitering. These are human rights concerns.
Yes, certainly they are. First of all, there is an instance when then I was acting director for complaints, investigation, and legal services a couple of years ago. A complaint came to my desk in respect of a girl that was arrested and locked up at the Eastern, I call it now, this Eastern Police. Yeah, she was locked up. And then in the morning, she found semen on her vagina parts, you know. And so she now suspected that somebody must have tampered with her. The matter came up, we took it on. We took it on to the letter. We made sure that that person that was treated that way was giving attention. The police officer was reprimanded, suspended, and sent to PTS for a couple of weeks. So when such matter come to us, we just don't lay them, just don't put them down. Like he said, we don't wait until the complaints come to us. No. When we hear them on paper, social media, wherever we see them, we act on them ASAP. We know that a lot of things are happening behind the scenes because me, I don't stay out late, but I know people stay out late, and for one reason or the other, maybe it might be something that has to do with their well-being or with their welfare, and they are arrested because they think they are loitering. You know, and say what you may, once the police arrest them, the next place to take them is to the cell, because that's where they have to keep them. Where they have to keep them. We know that sometimes some circumstances, it's really not right that are being manhandled. But once we know, we are aware of it. Once we are aware of it, we take it on desperately. We don't joke with that, and that's why we have our gender. I want to make emphasis on our gender desk. We have a directorate of gender, and that directorate is moving everywhere with support from UNFPA and other bodies, international bodies that are supporting them. They are doing so much, you know. So the issue of loitering and others, we are looking into it very closely. We know that there are issues with the police, and just like you mentioned, there are those who sleep out, they don't have somewhere to sleep, like you said, and there are those who go out to fend, maybe sometimes at night. Hookup girls, we call them hookup girls. They go out to fend in the night, and whilst they are around, they hold them, they arrest them, and they detain them. You know, we think some of these things, just like, you know, human rights is not just for Human Rights Commission. You can, like you said, you can take on a matter. Once you see that it's desperate and it needs national attention, you can take it on, like Advocate has done. They are an entity as well that advocates rights. You know, they can take it on. We also have, he will say that we have the primary responsibility. Yes, we have. But then other entities can. That's why we have civil society. And civil society is doing extremely very well as well with us.
Part of the human rights, we're supposed to have access to water. We're to have access to electricity. We are told, but we don't. That's a human right concern.
It is. It is a major, major concern. And the Human Rights Commission has done so much on that as well. There's a report already. We have a report on the water crisis in Sierra Leone. We did a thorough investigation as to the cause of why this is happening. We went all over to find out what happened. We sent out our officers. We went from point to point to get out the facts. We came out with the facts. We called the water company, the ministry, to a meeting. We had a big meeting with them in our conference room. We projected a report. We shared a report with them. We told them what people think is happening and other people think that could be corrected, because we said water, it's not just water. Clean and safe water is a right for every Sierra Leonean. It's not a privilege that any politician can come and say, when I vote me, I will bring water for honor. No. Water is an obvious thing. It's a right for every Sierra Leonean. Electricity, yes, it is a right for every Sierra Leonean.
A right, but yet we don't enjoy it.
I just wanted to mention
Again, we say there's what we call progressive realization. Progressive realization. Sometimes we look at the coffers of the state. Do they have enough money to do it just at the grow? If they don't have, then we can advance progressive. We support progressive realization. In as much as we know, and when we are pushing, asking them to do it that way, but we also ask them, please be reasonable in your use of the word progressive. Be reasonable and make sure that people get what is due them.
How progressive must this be? Because these have been consistently consistent issues. The issue about access to clean water, the issue about electricity, year in, year out, we constantly keep, complaining or requesting for just basic rights like that.
Of course, they are basic rights. They are basic rights, and every Sierra Leonean must enjoy it. They must enjoy it. So we are saying, that's what we said. We are continuing the advocacy on that. We are continuing discussions on that as well. Like I said, we had a big meeting with the water case. We have not done any intensive investigation on electricity yet. On water, we have done intensive investigation on water, and the outcome we have discussed with the stakeholders that be that this is a situation we recommended to them. That report is with them. Electricity, we have not done any thorough investigation into why do we have electricity stock. But then I think it's the right as well for Sierra Leoneans, and they must enjoy it. But then we are again saying, if the means are available, if the state has the means to do it, we are saying the state should do it. They should do it.
You wanted to make a
question? Theorists will always say that socio-economic rights or second-generation human rights depend on the availability of resources, which of course governments or the world over will frequently claim they do not have. But not all of those rights depends on the availability of resources. Let's take water, for example. Some of those depend on policy reforms, concrete actions by the government. So, for example, when you look at the Goma Dam, that old peninsula, the water catchment areas, these are areas that are supposed to be declared protected areas. They fall under the protected areas by virtue of the act. And these, sadly, these are areas that have been encroached upon by powerful men and women in society. If you go around Guma, I remember there was once a time when Guma was fighting with somebody who claimed the person constructed very close to the dam at this Regent Grafton Road, and the person claimed that his ancestors had ownership of that place. When it's quite pathetic. So because government has tolerated, or there seems to be, lack of interest on the part of the government, because they are the very ones that are building mansions, eroding the water catchment areas, and then destabilizing the water sources and everything, the basements and everything. That is why they are not ready to take action. Some of these things do not necessarily depend solely on the availability of resources. We are talking about climate change. Whilst some ban and others were at COP28 advocating for debt cancellation so as to free up fiscal space for government to increase spending on environmental issues and blah blah blah, government lifted ban on timber, and people said you are here advocating for XYZ. Lawrence, see what your government is doing.
Let me hold you there. And another two major concerns that we citizens are very much worried about is the access to education and healthcare. Now there is free healthcare and also that of free education. What's your assessment based on that?
I cannot pin a specific rate for that. What I would say is, us as a commission, we have been monitoring. There are lapses. For the free education, we have monitored all over the country. We know there are lapses that needs to be corrected. Yeah, the right to health, free healthcare, there are lapses that needs to be corrected. They are in our report, and those lapses have been raised with the appropriate personnel, the appropriate stakeholders. You know, just like I said, when we monitor, we engage the appropriate stakeholders. When we monitor, for example, health, hospitals, we engage the appropriate personnel. When we monitor education sector, we engage the appropriate personnel. We tell them the outcome of our investigation. Tell them this and this and this are what we have found out. But let me make one point clear. You know, governments, MDAs are sponsored, they are being financed from the consolidated fund. That's where government takes to give a subvention to MDAs, including us as a commission. All right. So if most of the major job that you see being done, for example, on water, electricity, most of them are not from Sierra Leone coffers. Most of them are donor driven. They are donor driven because our coffers are not strong enough to manage those ones. The water, it's fine. Everyone has right to water, you know. But like I said, we are continuing to push the need for government to know that water and electricity are greatly demanded by citizens of this country.
Well, the point I was making, sorry to interject. No, the point I was making is that water, especially in our own case, because we are blessed with abundance of rain, in our own case, we should not be constrained for that. Because if the government were serious enough, it will stop all construction, or probably stop all construction within water catchment areas. Because those constructions are destabilizing the water tables, the basement, and
I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you, Lawrence.
I read years ago that suggested that this region could become water scarce by 2025.
I agree with you, Lawrence. I agree with you, Lawrence. That should be it. But let me tell you something. If a group of person were here, he was going to tell you that even us using the water are the ones who are wasting the water. The government will tell you that.
We have our own problems in terms of citizens' attitude
so in as much as there's plenty of water,
particularly water. But what I'm saying is that the critical challenge we are faced with, for me, for example, me, I don't pass 10 years and not get pump water. Not to nasi story, bra. Now well water, it don't pass 10 years. So, and this is not just about me, it's a number of thousands of people. Where go to the inside communities, you see them very early, 4:30, 5 a.m. You see kids lining up with gallons.
That's why we have said it's
and those totally are protected sources of water. We have trees, but people are encroaching Guma catchment areas, and the government is doing. I'm not just talking about this government. This has been an issue with successive governments. And so if the Human Rights Commission were truly concerned about this situation, I mean, you should be enforcing, compelling government to do the needful.
How do we compel government? We compel government by, when we go investigate our findings, we recommend to the appropriate stakeholders. Say this is what we have found out. And the issue of children going out has become a major concern that we have raised in our reports. Because we think that most of them are school kids. It affects their education. So is how this water issue can affect their education as well?
That is
because they leave early in the morning, they go. So we think it's a major issue. We have raised that several times, time without number, just like you said, time without number with the stakeholders that be. We've summoned them to a big meeting in our room.
Take a position. Years back, the commission took a position and says that this SAP should be banned from peacekeeping mission. So the commission should also be ready and willing to take some kind of action or position.
A position has to get an informed source. A position has to get an informed source. A position has to get an informed source, and the informed source could be do an inquiry. Do an inquiry.
You have the that is why citizens are now running to ECOWAS court. Every now and then, it tells us about the deteriorating situation of human rights practices in the country. Because if our own justice system cannot afford justice to its citizens, then that is why people are running into ECOWAS court.
No, going to ECOWAS course, it's a right for every Sierra Leonean to do.
What I'm saying is that
it doesn't mean that because human rights are eroded there. It's because you think that you need to go there.
No, it's not because of what we think. It is because the remedies in country are not sufficient or adequate enough to address the challenges we are faced with. That is why.
Richard, let me ask this question: how do we go about in order to strengthening human rights laws and policies in Sierra Leone?
Well, first of all, the Human Rights Commission has a major role in that, because we have the responsibility to help government to review its laws. Yeah, because if the laws are there and alarm is raised on them, red flag is raised on them, we can go and ask government that this law needs to be taken to the table for review. As I speak, the Child Rights Act was reviewed, and the Human Rights Commission played a vital role in that, to make sure that some provisions in the Child Rights Act are actually reviewed. Yeah. So the best way that we can do is request government that we look at these laws and say we can review them to make them rights friendly. That's basically what we do.
Richard, we can't round off without talking about the responsibilities accompanying these human rights. In this very country of ours, we've seen a situation, take for example the Tombo riot, where citizens who have infrastructure put out for their benefits go on the rampage. They burnt down a medical facility, the police station. In a country where resources are scarce, they put an infrastructure for the benefit of those around that community. When they're angry, they bring it down. We've seen university students at Froabe College, IPAM, who would get angry at administration. They would pelt stones at their
school
buildings. We've seen how citizens take lightly things they're supposed to take seriously because of their political affiliations or supports. The responsibility of citizens also contributes towards the slow development in the nation and the suppression of some of the rights they're supposed to enjoy. But we don't amplify this often.
Okay, I think I made mention of that already initially when I made mention of Section 13 of the Sierra Leone Constitution. That Constitution provides clearly that the loyalty of every Sierra Leonean should be to the state and not to any institution or anybody or any person. Your loyalty should be to the state. That's one. And the same provision, the same Section 13, also provides that no Sierra Leonean should destroy government property. You shouldn't destroy government property. It's against the law. So we are saying all of these ones are totally wrong. But then, where do we put those blames? Most times when it's political time, you see people going on the rampage. That's when they have the opportunity to destroy properties. Or you see, they say we are protesting, and then that protest is approved, and they go down to do it. That's when you see some of them, they will leave the protest way, they go another way to just cause mayhem, destroy government properties with malice. In Tombo, like you said, they burned down the government hospital, they burned down the police station. And these are two structures that actually provides for them in that community. They burned down the hospital, they burned down the police station. You are angry, yes you are. And I'll go back to Lawrence, because Lawrence is still apprehensive about our justice system, you know. But then you have somewhere to go back to. You know, if you think you are aggrieved, you don't need to go and burn that government property. Go and use the appropriate channel to get attention. Not to go and burn government property because you want to vent out your anger in that direction. It's totally wrong. And I'll always direct citizens to Section 13. Even if you cannot read a book, go take that one, just that one page, not even one page, half of a page, read it, and it tells you what your responsibility is as a Sierra Leonean here in Sierra Leone.
Coming to that, how was the Commission fully engaged law enforcement or lawmakers, and also that of citizens to be able to understand their rights? Like you rightfully mentioned, citizens burnt down the hospital and that of what is it again?
Police station.
Police station, and those things are meant for them.
Public service.
Yeah, public service. How fully has your commission been engaging lawmakers and also citizens to be actually able to understand their rights?
I am director of education, communication, and training. My background has been teaching. So every opportunity I have, I've trained police all over the country, by the way, all over the country. Train them on their rights, their own rights as well, and their responsibilities. Yeah, weapons, use of weapons, and what have you. A lot of training has been conducted for the silent police. We might not, because they are over 11,000. We can't conduct training for over 11,000. It's not possible, you know. But the feel that we are able to get around, we have been conducting trainings for them. Conduct training for them on their rights and their responsibilities as law enforcement agencies. We have done it for ASLAF, we have done it for SLP, we have done it for the correctional centers. Telling them that you own responsibility. Now there is this thing that the silent police wants to gradually move from a force to a service. And I had an engagement with one of their personnel at is it Epic Radio somewhere. We were there, myself and him, and one thing I told him, if you are rendering service, you are the servant, I am the master. Now moving from police to force to service, now they are now servants, we are the masters. So a servant cannot lord his authority over the master. Then there is something wrong totally. So that's again we are beginning to inject that into them to know that even at PTS, before they are recruited at PTS, we have a day session with them, on human rights, on their responsibilities as law enforcement agencies when they go out, and their own rights as well. I think we have been doing that.
We have messages on our Facebook page. We'll read some of the messages and get your response. Arnold Timan says, we have a war against poverty. Kanu John Bobo says, may the good Lord take us through 2025 in unity and prosperity as a nation.
And Arnold again says, we have a problem with honesty. After the past protests, what was gained? How many failed attempt to illegally remove the government? What are the lawmakers for, and what are they paid for? What is the courts for? What is the use of an opposition leader? One thing I noticed about this government is that they are worried about the lack of support in the capital city, as it is a stronghold of the opposition party.
Mystic Dwazak says the Human Rights Commission has been tremendous in their operations, just that they need to do more in the area of human rights abuses, which is still occurring and undermines our democracy. Secondly, the Commission should focus on ensuring public institutions uphold fundamental human rights practices in Sierra Leone.
And Mustafa says, Lawrence, nobody is denying the fact that people have right to air their views through peaceful protests or so. But you equally also need to understand that every right goes along with responsibility.
Mamadou Bangura says, good morning, AYV. According to Sierra Leone's constitution, under the fundamental human rights, protest is part of democracy. Please allow people to exercise their fundamental human rights. This country is going from bad to worse situation, especially the cost of living for Sierra Leoneans.
And Jibril says there is nothing forever. Freedom is coming one day.
Dauda Tarawali says, Una de afraid for investigate EDSA, Ledipa Kechunana in ministry.
And someone was asking who is the mayor of Freetown and what party is she. Arnold again says part of the problem with human rights problems in our country is to do with poverty. And Arnold again says lack of nationwide agreed plan to fix the issues of amenities.
Dauda Tarawali says some of these MDAs are just waste of taxpayers' money. There is no way they will hold their paymaster accountable for anything.
And Mosdi says the most common human rights violation in Africa, Sierra Leone, is deprivation of proper civic education of the citizens to fully understand their rights and responsibilities. And
Mamadou Bangura says nothing to write home about. of the ending of 2024. This government is one of the worst governments since I was born. They're just there at the media as a lip singer. Even your flagship program, you can't walk towards that.
And Abdullah Kaibo says, good morning, AYV. Madam Phoebe, please tell Dr. Richard to stop abusing the phrase progressive realization. Government in, government out. The story of in access to clean water and energy and a better way of life has been under constant threat. A lot of fundings from donors come in support towards this facility, but in the end, no progress is realized. Go to the streets, you see people late at night fetching water. That, to some extent, is the cause of teenage pregnancy, thieves, radicalism in youth, and all over the place. With all the funds that have come in to support the country's energy sector, we still rely on the ship for energy. Imagine the World Bank gave us grants to ease the transportation wahala in Freetown, and the government, through its implementation strategy, told us, the citizens, that the people of Sierra Leone do not need an easy way out of cheap transport fares. They bought the buses and increased the cost of transport fares by 100%. As a country, we are not realizing any progress so far.
Finally, from my end, Mosdi says, let's stop beating about the bush, yeah? The human rights practices in Sierra Leone has always been restricted to certain areas. Some of these areas are political. That is, when our politicians, especially the ones that are in governance, for whatever reason, feel threatened or insecure, the rights of the people become of less or non-existent. Another area where people's rights have been stripped is when some institutional big guns are involved. Another group of people are the ones that have the authority to enforce laws and regulations. Rich people, traditional leaders, to name but a few. All of these groups use and misuse or abuse their power to suppress the rights of the people.
Lastly, from Arnold, he says, it doesn't matter who you put in government, poverty remains.
Yes, your response to these messages?
Yes, I think I have a couple of them that I will. I'll begin with the one who said, let me stop the misuse of the word progressive realization. And he made mention of water and electricity and the misappropriation of donor funds that are directed for them. You know, we as a commission, we own responsibility to engage, to talk to government, to make sure that starting rights are giving out to people enjoy starting rights. And that's, like I said, we have been doing and will continue doing. The aspect of misappropriation, that is for the Anti-Corruption Commission to handle. Because when monies come in, we don't know that monies are in. You know, when monies are being expended, we don't know how they are being expended. All we know is let the people enjoy the rights to safe and clean water. Let them get access to electricity, constant electricity. Yeah? How they get it down is now responsibility of government. If those are misappropriated, then that's the different thing altogether, and that's what it's to handle. Civic education. I think the country is doing very well. The government is doing very well with that. They now have a strategy. The strategy, civic education strategy, which has 6 pillars, which is anchored on 6 pillars. And if all of these ones, if they're not just there as blue in white or blue on white, then I think what's there, those 6 pillars, can make Salone a better place. Because the 6th pillar talks about Salone for everyone, inclusivity, which is fine. If Salone is for everyone, then that's perfect for all of us. It talks about digital Salone, you know, digitizing Salone. All of these ones are very good things if they come to fruition. But the strategy is there now. We hope and pray that government will not just be paying lip service to it, but they make sure that it comes to fruition. Yeah. We are afraid of investigating ESSA. No, sir, we are not. We have a Business and Human Rights Directorate now, which we established a couple of years ago. They are doing so well already, and that falls within their purview to go and investigate and see what's happening. You know, because they are the ones that deal with business and human rights. Because ESSA is a business entity. You know, so we have a unit that handles that. They are there and they're working on that. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
I think that's the couple of things I can just respond to.
Over to you, Lawrence.
Yeah, when I talked about protest, I know, of course, that every right has a corresponding responsibility. My submission was predicated on the fact that citizens' attempt at protest have been constantly denied. And that is worrisome. For instance, in Liberia, we saw what's the former president, George Weah, that his government gave clearance for citizens to protest over a declining economic situation. It happened in Ghana. Most recently in Kenya, we saw where the government intended to introduce a bill, a finance act that could have brought some hardship on the populace. These were young people who took to the street to protest. Some of them were killed. Over 20 of them were killed.
Property destroyed.
Yes, but that was because the security forces provoked the situation by firing live rounds at peaceful, unharmed protesters. For us in Sierra Leone, our situation is a bit dicey in the sense that even those who would have genuine intentions, there are people who will politicize their actions, and it is that politicization of protest that has caused the government to constantly deny citizens the right to protest.
Now you're speaking.
I talked about Babadi and others that they have the legitimacy to do so. But if I were in their shoes, I will not do it. Let the APC and Dr. Samura, let them write for protest. I will not do it. The prevailing situation in the country, security situation in the country, will not even permit such. If it were some other issues they had wanted to protest, let's say, for example, some social or economic issues, the economy is very bad, we all know it. Those are the issues that people should be thinking about now. Whatever happened in that election, I've said it time and again. As much as there were issues, the Constitution provides an explicit pathway to address them. The APC could not go to court because they don't have trust in the judiciary. And it is right. They are right. Because even the EOM, Election Observation, EU EOM in 2021 made reference to that there was significant mistrust in the election management bodies, i.e. ECSL, judiciary, police, and others. Those issues are being addressed in the agreement for national unity. One of the structures set up in that agreement was the tripartite committee. They have finished, completed their work, submitted their report. The implementation of those recommendations are ongoing. And that is why if you watch the MCC, I think it was the US Embassy that put out a clarification that it is tied. It is tied to the implementation, full implementation of those recommendations. So what else are you fighting for? They don't address the issue. The APC is now moving forward. Somebody they say, will go demonstrate. They're not serious.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this morning.